All right, welcome back, everyone, for our deep dive
Yeah.
into, we're continuing our journey through the book of Revelation.
Right.
And today we're going to be looking specifically at chapter 8,
Yes.
which is, every chapter is pretty intense, but chapter 8 is really something. I mean, we're talking angels, trumpets,
Mm-hmm.
plagues. I mean, it's got it all.
Yeah, it's got the whole apocalyptic shebang going on in there.
It really does.
Yeah.
But before we actually get to all the noise and the craziness that really, defines this chapter,
Yeah.
there's this really it's almost an eerie silence at the beginning of the chapter.
Yeah.
Like it talks about how there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour.
It's such a striking image. I mean, the silence itself becomes an image. Like,
Right.
it's not just the absence of sound. It's like this pregnant pause.
Right.
Like, something's about to happen.
Yeah, it's like the calm before the storm.
Yeah. Exactly.
You can feel it.
You can feel it in the air. Absolutely.
And then, of course, speaking of things about to happen, right after the silence, it's like,
Ooh.
all right, it's time to get the show on the road. We've got 7 angels who receive 7 trumpets.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another angel at the altar offering incense. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what's the meaning behind the incense here?
Well, incense in this context, it symbolizes the prayers of the faithful rising up to God.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's this beautiful image of communication, this direct line between humanity and the divine.
Right. So, and it always makes me think about how, whether it's through our prayers, whether it's through our actions,
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to, I guess, make our voices heard
Yeah,
or make our hopes and our desires known.
exactly.
But here it's specifically talking about the prayers of the saints, right?
Mhm.
Being presented before God.
Exactly. The incense carries those prayers,
Yeah.
giving them weight, giving them presence before the throne of God.
Uh-huh. Okay. So prayers are going up. We've got incense. Everything seems, relatively calm still. We've got the angels.
Right.
And then, of course, the tone shifts dramatically.
It does,
The
yeah.
angel throws the censer, which is filled with fire, down to the earth.
Ooh.
I mean, talk about a dramatic shift.
Right. This is a major turning point in the chapter.
Yeah.
It's a pivot from quiet reflection to sudden action.
Yeah.
And that's, the stage is set now for this chaos that's about to unfold
Right.
with each trumpet blast.
And boy, do those trumpet blasts.
They deliver.
Yeah, it's like a crescendo of it's like hail and fire.
Yeah.
We've got a burning mountain being cast into the sea.
Huh?
We've got a star called wormwood,
Yeah.
which poisons the waters. I mean, it's
Intense.
intense. And it's like, when you read this, it's hard not to get caught up in the anxiety of it all.
It is. And it's easy to get, I think, swept away in the literalness of those images.
Mm-hmm.
But, we have to remember that Revelation is full of symbolism.
Right.
And you can interpret these trumpet judgments on multiple levels.
Okay.
On the one hand, you could see them as literal events,
Uh-huh.
this divine, outpouring of wrath against a sinful world.
Right.
But you can also see them as metaphors
Okay.
for the consequences of turning away from God.
It makes me think about, I may not have a burning mountain crash into my,
Right.
my backyard.
Right.
But we all face the consequences of our actions.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, and I think that's a really a good point. Maybe the burning mountain represents the upheaval we experience when we ignore our conscience.
Uh-huh.
Or the consequences of choices that harm others.
Right.
It's not always this kind of, fire and brimstone imagery,
Right.
but it can be just as impactful.
Absolutely. And, I've always been kind of fascinated by the image of wormwood,
Yeah.
the star that poisons the waters.
Like a haunting image.
It is. What do you, what's your interpretation of that?
Well, wormwood is often associated with bitterness and poison.
Uh-huh.
And in a spiritual sense, you could see it representing the spread of false teachings,
Right.
or corrupting influences that poison our minds and our souls.
I mean, if you think about it today, we're bombarded with so much information, misinformation,
Right.
negativity. It's almost like, you could say that that's like a modern day wormwood,
Yeah.
poisoning our thoughts, poisoning our perspectives.
It's a compelling parallel. Think about how easily negativity can spread and contaminate our thinking.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because with each trumpet blast, it always mentions a third part
Yes.
So, a third part of the tree is a third part of the sea. Why is that detail repeated?
Well, if we think about that repetition and we connect it to the bigger picture of Revelation, I think it could symbolize incompleteness.
Okay.
Maybe it's suggesting that this isn't the final judgment, but
Right.
rather a series of warnings.
Okay.
Or perhaps it represents a separation, a division between those who heed the warnings and those who don't.
So almost like, it's like a wake-up call.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, hey, you still have a chance
Exactly.
to turn things around.
It's a cosmic alarm bell, urging people to turn back toward righteousness before it's too late.
Right, right. And then, of course, the chapter ends with, as if that wasn't enough,
Right.
this really chilling cry. Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
What a powerful and ominous.
It is. But I think it's important to note, too, that that cry of woe isn't just a proclamation of doom.
Okay.
It's a lament. It's a deep expression of sorrow for those who choose to remain in their sin and suffer the consequences. But even in this warning, there's a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
It's almost as if the angel is still pleading with people to turn away from their destructive paths and seek redemption.
So even in the midst of all of this,
Right.
this apocalyptic
Yeah.
craziness,
Yes.
there's still that,
There's a way out.
there's always a way out.
Absolutely. Wow, this has been
Intense.
it's been an intense deep dive.
It is.
I mean, we've gone from silence to this cacophony of trumpets,
Yeah.
judgments, plagues. But as you said, there's still this underlying message of hope.
Absolutely.
What do you think? What do you think is the most important takeaway for someone who's reading this? Encountering chapter 8 for the first time.
Well, I think it raises an important question for all of us, If the events in Revelation are symbolic, what might they symbolize in our own lives?
Ooh, that's good.
What trumpets are sounding in your world?
Yeah. What wormwood might you be consuming?
Uh-huh.
Are you heeding the warnings? And ultimately, how can you choose a path that leads to hope and redemption?
Wow. That's a powerful thought. That's a powerful thought to leave our listeners with today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you.